All right, let's get this live stream started. I think I'm a little late today in getting things set up, so bear with me for just a minute as I just check some of these things out. A couple of things that I wanted to chat about today. Just a couple of updates. I don't think I'm going to be doing some news today, but I hope to do more news in the live streams like I used to do. But wanted to address more of the questions that I've been receiving in the last few months, especially about the typical ones with related to pharmacy informatics, but also some of the ones related to my transition into like a tech role. But give me 1 minute as I pull up the list of questions that I collated. Okay. All right. So I'm just start off with a couple of updates. Thanks to everyone that is tuning in or plan to tune in. Um, these are going to be very informal. I'm not sure what these are going to manifest into over time, but I hope to use these as just kind of very informal ways to talk about different things on my mind, news within pharmacy informatics and tech, um, address questions, Q&A, and then bring on anyone that wants to chat live on one of these sessions. So if anytime you want to jump in the stream, feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll send you a link and we can chat. Okay, so let me start off with a couple of updates. The first of which is Kevin Claussen. For those of you who don't know, Kevin Claussen was a trailblazer in the world of pharmacy informatics. He passed away when I was, I think, sometime last week. I was away in Canada on a trip, and I was just hearing all the news about him. I wanted to bring him up because he was someone who has had a very large impact on my life. Tim Anks wrote an amazing tribute to him, and highly encourage you to read more about Kevin in his tribute because I think Tim did an amazing job of highlighting someone who has made a huge impact in the world of pharmacy informatics. Um, I actually learned about social media and consumer health informatics through Kevin when he was still at Nova. I sent him an email when I was interested in pursuing a PGY2 in pharmacy informatics at the time, and he took the time to just kind of tell me more about the field, what it's about, things like that, and kept in touch over the years. And he's really helped guide me in my own journey. So, just want to say a big condolence to his family at this time, and he was an amazing mentor and trailblazer in pharmacy informatics. But rest in peace to him. Another update before we jump into it is that I shared it a couple weeks ago that I'm going to be starting as a student at Stanford part-time. And I think I've gotten a few questions about it, but just to give like a broader overview about this is that, I've always thought about going back to school. I think that's not something new or not surprising to anyone per se. But I had planned on pursuing a biomedical informatics, either master's or PhD, for the last few years. Been thinking about it quite a bit. And as I was doing it more and more, especially with my experience at Verily currently, I've actually been more inclined to pursue a very technical route and interested in doing more work in the world of computer science and software engineering. So my current plan, which maybe I'll release again at some point, I don't have it handy right now. I made a schedule for my list of classes. I had to change it recently, but what my current plan right now is to pursue a graduate certificate in biomedical informatics. Many of the things that are talked about there are very relevant to my field, so I want to do that. And then afterwards, over the next few years, begin taking courses in computer science. Now, I won't be an official like master's student at the time. I'm going to be taking a couple of courses as a non-matriculated student, see how it goes because I understand the courses are very difficult in computer science. And so after I take about 3 or 4 classes, I'll plan to apply formally to the computer science master's or MS at Stanford. So a bit of an update on that, and I started my first class called Data Science. Let me actually post it in there in case anyone's interested. It's called Data Science in Medicine. I have been wanting to take this class for quite some time because of the professor who teaches it, is Nigam Shah. He was someone that I found out about a couple of years ago from my colleague Evan, and he's just amazing in the world of biomedical informatics, and I've been wanting to learn more about him. So I'm very excited for this course. Actually, biomedical data science and medicine. I'm trying to find the course so I can share it in case anyone's interested. You can take this course one-off if you wanted to. Here it is. I'm going to post it in the link. So that's a bit more about the course if you want to check that out. Just started last week. Super fun. It looks like it's going to be very intensive. It's about 15 to 20 hours a week of work. Looks like most of it would be homework and lectures, of course. And it'll be heavy usage of R programming. So I'm beginning again to learn R so I can do the homework and follow along in the class, because it seems as though R is going to be a very big piece of this course. I was learning Python for a bit, but now I need to pivot back to R. So quick update on that. Okay, so let's jump into some of the questions. I've been getting quite a few questions, especially when I was on PTO. I'm just going to address them. Most of them are related to pharmacy informatics, and then there's quite a few that address my experience working at Verily, which I'm not going to talk in detail so much about, more so at a higher level, maybe more so like transitioning to tech kind of thing. But before I do that, just FYI, if anyone has questions or comments, what I'm trying to do to field more of these questions is to answer them in live streams. So it's more real time. I can engage with folks and be more timely with my responses, because I'm just not timely when it comes to that. All right, let's jump into the questions. So the very first one, I'm not going to say any names just to keep everyone's identity confidential, but I am going to post the questions that I am receiving. So let me post this first one. This is a pretty fresh question. Just post this and then we can read. Okay, so first question, it's about related to pharmacy informatics. As I'm going through my PGY1, I'm realizing further that I enjoy what informatics can provide to pharmacists, providers, and positive patient outcomes. My concern is that I may have realized this late, with only a handful of informatics PGY2s available, which could be a barrier to job opportunities. What advice could you provide in navigating this? So I haven't read these questions yet, by the way, so I'm kind of answering them on the fly, taking a second to process this, because I'm not sure I completely understand the concern. So realizing informatics is important. It's the impact informatics can provide. Perhaps the question here is because you're discovering that informatics may be something you want to do quite late in the game, because mid-year is right around the corner. Maybe I'm going to answer this question from that approach. So, actually, I think I do understand it. And the fact that PGY2 might be your path, because it could be, if you don't have one, it could be a barrier to job opportunities. I think the first thing I'll say is that there's still time. October, so month of October, month of November, and month of December. So 3 months to kind of like prepare. I don't think it's too bad. When I was a PGY1 resident, I was also going through whether or not I should pursue informatics or pursue infectious disease. And I think that I spent the first few months trying to figure that out by taking rotations in informatics, learning about informatics, and didn't really start prepping until later on, probably like halfway through not halfway, like maybe a quarter way through my PGY2. And also, in short, I don't think it's too late if you want to pursue a PGY2. I don't understand from your question if you are against pursuing a PGY2, because maybe that's partly due to your question. Maybe I'll try to address that too. But if you're interested, I don't think it's too late. Definitely apply and see what it's like. It doesn't hurt to see if it's an opportunity in a pathway. The other one is jobs that require a PGY2. I made some videos about this in the past. I kind of agree with it still, but my views have changed a little bit. And to elaborate on that, I've always been under the impression that the job demand is so much higher than the job supply. And when we talk about job supply, I'm talking about pharmacists with PGY2 informatics training. And so because the demand is so high and the supply is so low, that the ease in which you can get a job is does not require a PGY2 per se, because it's already very difficult to find a pharmacy informaticist with PGY2 training. Uh, I don't feel as strongly about that perspective I had a few years ago. I think I made a video about that back in like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And the reason why I don't feel as strongly about that now is because the demand for informatics folks overall has decreased dramatically. A lot of the demand was driven by the High Tech Act, where everyone was they wanted more and more folks to help implement EHRs, but most of the US is already implemented. So the demand has dropped significantly, and the ease in which you can get a pharmacy informatics job or informatics job, period, it has dropped a bit. At the same time, I agree to some extent on that perspective, because I think that pharmacy informatics is still a desirable job and in demand to some extent. It's not even close to what the demand was before, but you still need that specialty in that role in your hospital. Maybe more of the larger hospitals, but you need it in hospitals, period. So I don't think it would be a barrier. Now, if you had it, would it make your case easier in getting jobs? 100%. I think having that training gives you a lot more perspective and breadth of experience to be competitive as a pharmacy informatics candidate for those kind of jobs. So I wouldn't say it's a huge barrier, but if you're interested in hospital and you want to work in that capacity, especially hospital and health systems, then I would encourage you to try for PGY2. If you don't get it, you don't get it. If you get it, great. So I wouldn't think too much about this being a barrier right now. If you're interested in applying, go apply. Okay, let me take another sip. Let's move on to the next question. So this one's actually kind of long too. I'm going to copy this question and then we're going to paste this into the chat. Okay, next question. I'm currently a second-year pharmacy student at University of Washington. I have a strong passion combining healthcare and technology, and I've always wanted to work as a non-traditional pharmacist when I graduate. Pharmacy informatics is one of the fields that I'm significantly interested in, and I hope to get more coaching in terms of looking for internships during school and how I should prepare for employment after graduation. So this one I just pasted. I have a couple of forums on my website where I try to solicit as much information as possible for individuals that want to get in contact with me. And probably not obvious, but what I hope to do is actually use a lot of these questions to drive these live streams. So if I answer the question, I can answer for some other folks too, using this platform. So this came from that. Let's see, second year student. So one of the questions on the forum on my website is about coaching. I'll probably plan on setting like small group sessions with students to just, and probably pharmacists as well, to just kind of coach them in different things if they're interested in pharmacy informatics. So this one looks like it's related to internships during school and how I should prepare for employment. So these are great questions. And I'll give a disclaimer, a couple of disclaimers. The first of which is, I'm a few years out of school, and the curriculums I'm sure have changed a bit. And then in terms of like experiences, I'm probably not as aware of all the different opportunities that are available, but they're definitely a lot more than when I was a student. Um, so definitely take my comments with a grain of salt and do your own research as well, and talk to folks, talk to your professors, and see what kind of things they say as well. So let's start off with the internships piece. Regardless of what internship it is, I highly encourage you to pursue some type of internship, even if that is a traditional path, which doesn't sound like you're interested in. But even if it's a traditional path, like pharmacy practice in the community setting or pharmacy practice in the hospital setting. And the reason why I say that is because if anyone is interested in pharmacy informatics, what I always tell them is that we are first and foremost pharmacists first, healthcare providers first, and informatics is a specialty. And part of our roles as pharmacy informaticists is to develop the tools and design the tools and build the tools for pharmacists. So if you're not familiar with what pharmacists do in the practice setting, it's not good for your role as a pharmacy informaticist, because a lot of our experience, and in my opinion, what drives a great informaticist is our experience in boots on the ground in pharmacy practice to inform those decisions. You're not relying as much on your stakeholders, who are typically pharmacists, that say, hey, we need to build some tool to dose these narrow therapeutic drugs, or we need a way to evaluate what medications patients had before, when they arrived in the ED, or what meds they had in the ED when they get admitted to the floor. Those kind of things, and how the workflow um, transpires, if that's the right word. Those kind of things I think are really, really important and extremely impactful as your role in the pharmacy informatics. So even if it's a internship that's not in pharmacy informatics, highly encourage you to take it, because that kind of experience makes you a better informatics pharmacist. Now, when we're talking about internships for pharmacy informatics, which I'm assuming is more of your question here, I think this one's really hard, and I've been trying to identify more opportunities in terms of internships, because I'm not aware of all the opportunities out there, and all the opportunities out there might not even be labeled as internship for pharmacy informatics people. So I'll say a couple things. The first of which, and the first that comes to mind, is that there is a amazing internship that I'm aware of for the last few years from Harvard. I'm gonna pull this one up. Internship, pharmacy informatics internship, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I post it every year. I think they see it every year. They post it every year too. So I'm gonna post this in the chat. So this is the Pharmacy Clinical Informatics Summer Internship Program at DCI, which is Division of Clinical Informatics, BID, BIDMC Harvard. I don't know what that stands for. Is that Brigham and Women's? Something like that. But anyways, it's an amazing opportunity that I looked at before. Uh, Go check it out. This is one of the closest ones I've seen for an internship for pharmacy informatics. So I'll say that first. Otherwise, there are many different types of pharmacy informatics opportunities. Some of the other ones that you may be interested are on from the federal government. I know that I posted this one in the past, related to internship opportunities, not to pharmacy informatics, but to biomedical informatics, from like CDC and things like that, which I actually don't have a link to, but let me see if I can find something. Medical informatics internship. Yeah, let's do this one. I'll post this. CDC has a list here. You can probably find many other opportunities. They listed by like your degree. So there's like internships for doctoral students, um, and even like masters and undergraduate students. So definitely check that out. A special highlight I would say also is like CDC, FDA typically have a very established program as well for pharmacy students, and I am fairly certain that they may have opportunities within pharmacy informatics. Probably not publicized, but if you are interested in working in the federal government or in that capacity to some extent, I would encourage you to reach out to them and ask for those opportunities. One of the things that I was trying to do back in 2019 when I was interning at the HHS slash ONC was to establish a pharmacy informatics rotation uh, or internship with those federal agencies. But I know that there's work and projects related to that, but there's probably nothing formal that they have to offer. But part of and what's exciting to me is that you can actually establish something by reaching out and saying what your interests are, and they may actually do something for you. So, CDC and FDA highly encourage you to reach out to that. The other one is ONC, which I know that they have opportunities, but they don't have any formal pathways. So ONC is the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT. I'll post a link to that. Let me see. ONC is where I did my internship as a MPH student, and at the time, nothing existed there. I just code messaged them like some support email, whatever is on the website. And I asked, I was like, hey, I'm a MPH student interested in pursuing an internship. And we just kind of talked back and forth about what that might look like over what time period. Um, and I interned there for a whole year. Uh, I would highly encourage you to reach out to them as well, because I know that there's many opportunities as it pertains to informatics. So that's the other one. And then just maybe a global one for internships is that, uh, or maybe two more things. The first thing as a global one is just looking at different companies you might be interested in working in. Actually, no, I take that back. Three things. The global thing I was trying to talk about was just look at different companies you're interested in, depending on whatever industry in. It could be tech industry, it could be academia, it could be in pharma, it could be in federal government, whatever the industry is. Look up different companies you're interested in potentially working for, reach out to them, and just ask if they have opportunities that pertain to pharmacy informatics. That's the first thing. The second thing is pharma. Um, I'm still very closely tied to my former alma mater at the University of Florida, and I talk to a lot of the students there. And one of the most interesting things and trends I've noticed over the last like 3 years is that a lot of students nowadays are interested in pharma industry. They're part of IPHO, which is an organization in pharmacy industry, and they're always talking about getting a internship in pharma, which is drastically different than when I was in pharmacy school because everyone wanted to do a hospital internship or to prepare for like residency. So another thing I would suggest taking a look at are the internship opportunities that pharma has because they are more well established. I know plenty of students that have done internships in pharma. And so if you're interested, I would also encourage you to take a look at if there's any informatics opportunities with different pharma companies because pharma is also very strong in the informatics world. And if they're not, I know many of them are building like these informatics opportunities and their capabilities as well. So pharma is a very unique area that I will highly encourage you to check out. And then the last one, which I'm going to do a selfish plug here, is the code. Is the Code 32, which is initiative that I launched a couple months back. It's a bit slower in traction. It's just kind of something that I'm working on when I have free time. And the idea behind the Code 32 is to provide students hands-on opportunities to learn informatics. And part of it was just hoping to chat with students to see what their interests are and then find different organizations and employers in these different industries and say, hey, I have these students who are very interested. Do you guys have any opportunities? And hopefully over time, be able to establish relationships with these different organizations to just send students to get hands-on experience. Um, the bigger picture with the Code 32 is to have more and more folks trained in pharmacy informatics by the year 2032. Uh, Let me see if I can share the server. I don't remember how to share this one. I created a Discord channel for this so folks can join the Discord and we can chat, because it's just very informal way of just learning about um, what kind of things we can do. I can't find it right now, unfortunately. Um, I'll share the website instead. Code 32. Code 32. Code 32. Okay, my details. I take that back. Here it is. Unfortunately, it looks like my website needs a bit of updating because it gives you a pretty big error when you log in. So I don't know if anyone's going to visit that website at that time. Anyways, more to come on that. It's a group of students and pharmacists and non-pharmacists that are interested in just doing more hands-on opportunities. I think one of the most difficult things about pharmacy informatics is precisely to this question. On internships, there's not a lot of good opportunities out there. And even if there are good opportunities, or if you're interested in pharmacy informatics, it's really hard to get hands-on experience, because in informatics, which is typically a project-driven role, getting hands-on experience is really, really important. Okay, so I spent quite a bit of time on that question. I'm going to move on to the next one. What was it after this one? How I should prepare for employment after graduation. I think this one's going to be very dependent on the path you choose, So, like a lot of folks that I talk to, especially students, or actually, no, just like folks who are interested in pharmacy informatics, will typically say, "Hey, I'm a student or I'm a pharmacist. I want to get into informatics. What's the path to do so?" And the difficulty in answering that question is because if we start from the end goal, which is pharmacy informatics, it is extremely broad. There are so many different things you can do in pharmacy informatics, and the term is so vague in some ways that it could mean so many different things that it's really hard to tell you, you should do an internship here and then a residency and then a fellowship, or you should do a master's here and do X, Y, and Z. There are so many different paths, but the bigger thing is the outcome you're looking for. I'm not sure what that outcome is, and I'll give you three different examples, a couple examples actually. The first of which, if we're thinking about like very traditional pharmacy informatics, we usually think about hospital and healthcare systems. So you want to be a pharmacy informaticist that works in a hospital health system. That's very common. So if that's the case, there are still more things that we would need to elaborate on, which is what part of that would you like to work on? So if it's a smaller organization, you would be a generalist, and then you would need to know a little bit of everything. If you're a specialist, like let's say you're someone who's writing reports, then you would want to learn more technical skills like how to write reports and how to query databases. So learning SQL will be pretty important in that route. Conversely, if you're not interested in the reporting side and you're interested in like building the tools for pharmacists, building decision support, things like that, your knowledge of reporting is not as important. Then you will want to probably be more aligned with clinical guidelines, making sure you know what happens boots on the ground, and doing like perhaps internships in pharmacy practice would help with that approach. So that's like a very That's one example if you want to do that. But sometimes nowadays, I hear a lot of people who want to go into pharmacy informatics, but they actually want to do it in a different setting. So, like in tech, there's opportunities there, or you can even do it in community. I know a lot of folks who do pharmacy informatics at CVS and Walgreens. I know a lot of people that do pharmacy informatics in pharma. I know people that do pharmacy informatics in the federal government, in like CDC, ONC, and I know a lot of people that do it in I don't remember what the other one was. There's like other companies basically, and the path to each one of those are very very different. I think what I would encourage you to do here, in terms of preparing for employment after graduation, is just talking with pharmacy informaticists or just people who work at an organization where you may see yourself in. So if you're interested in pharma, go reach out to different people who are in pharma. Easy way to do this, by the way, whatever company you're interested in, go on LinkedIn, look up the company, and then they will also show you the employees that work at that company. Send them a message telling them who you are, you're interested in their background, you're interested in their company. Can we talk more over like 10, 15 minutes, something like that, or even ask them questions in that very first message that they may be able to answer. So you can get an idea of if that's like the company and then the type of role you want to be interested in. So basically learning more about the field as a whole and what that role does, like pharmacy informatics in these different industries, because they're very, very different. And they can actually also elaborate how did they get into the position that they did. Mm. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Well, this one has a name, so I'm going to make sure I remove the name. Paste this. Okay, there it is. So this person said, "Hi Brian, I am currently in process of exploring my options for changing career as a pharmacist." So this person's a pharmacist already. Came across pharmacy informatics, and someone mentioned to me about you. Shout out to that person, by the way. I would really appreciate if you can give me some insight in pharmacy informatics and how I can get started with it. So it sounds like this person is a pharmacist and they're interested in pharmacy informatics and how to get started. So I think the very first thing I would say is that uh, there is a great course about, or actually, let me take a step back. The very first thing I would suggest is just learning more about the field, right? And the obvious next question is, how do I learn more about the field? What does it entail? Because maybe it's not something that you're even interested in once you learn more about it. And that's actually happened to a couple of folks that I've talked to in the past, where it's like, I want to do it. They did it. And they're like, this is actually not what I want to do. And I never want that to happen to someone else again. So I always encourage folks to learn about pharmacy informatics as much as they can before really setting their heart on this is actually what I want to do. Okay, so how do you do it? A couple of things that I usually say. The first of which is like your typical learning about pharmacy informatics from different organizations that talk about pharmacy informatics. First of which is AMIA. Let me post that. AMIA. AMIA is the American Medical Informatics Association. It's much more research heavy, and they talk much more about biomedical informatics, but clinical informatics and specifically pharmacy informatics is included in those discussions. Um, it's probably the de facto informatics organization for informaticists of all kinds. You can find a lot of great information about informatics there. The other one I would say is ASHP. So ASHP is obviously a pharmacy organization, and they talk more about hospital and healthcare pharmacists. And there's a lot of great information there. And what I would do is I'll say a couple things. Is they have something called the Section Advisory Group, or Section of Pharmacy Informatics and Technology. There's a lot of folks that are involved in their section advisory groups and volunteer. I just posted a link there. Encourage you to reach out to those folks to learn more about pharmacy informatics. And because the advisory groups are separated in a way where they talk about different interests. So there's like one on clinical applications, one on decision support, one on operations, another on professional development. Identify where your interests are and then reach out to those folks to learn more about it. But the website as a whole has a lot of information that's very specific to pharmacy informatics. In addition, they also have a certificate for pharmacy informatics where you can learn like very traditionally through a academic way of like lectures and stuff like that through there. So that's one. The other organization I always talk about is HIMSS. HIMSS is I always forget the full name of HIMSS. There's the website though. It's like health information. There it is. Healthcare Information and Management System Society. It's just exactly what it is. Healthcare information. There's a lot of great information there that talks about all the different domains. And I think you'll find a lot of great information from that website too. So those are the organizations that I typically suggest. The other thing I suggest is Tony Dow's Pharmacy IT and Me podcast. And so I'll post a link here. And the reason why I recommend this is because I think this is probably the most broad and pragmatic and detailed way of learning about all the things in pharmacy informatics. And I say that because Tony has done an amazing job of interviewing informatics pharmacists from everywhere. And he's been doing it for the last like few years. So he talks a lot. It looks like it's at episode 298. So you'll find a wealth of information of people just talking about their field in different areas of the industry. And I think you'll learn a lot about pharmacy informatics. He goes deeper into their backgrounds, their day to day, and things like that. It's a great place to learn. The last place I'll talk about is Pharmacy Informatics Academy. And because there's a lot of people who are newer and wants to learn more about it, Pharmacy Informatics Academy is an organization that I co-founded with three others, Tony, Beju, and David. And one of the first things we did is put together a free introductory course. It's a 3-hour course that kind of goes through the basics of pharmacy informatics, like very basics. It's, if anything, targeted more towards students. How to get involved, how do you learn more, what are the nitty-gritty things about pharmacy informatics to know as a whole. It's free. We get a lot of positive feedback on it. Go check it out. That's one. And then we created a second course last year, I think it was. Yes, I think it was last year, where it dives way deeper down into the nitty gritty of pharmacy informatics. And it's more targeted towards people who are about to start a career in pharmacy informatics or really wants to learn more hands-on details about it. So that is a very long-winded answer to your question. Let's move on to the next question. I think it looks like it's the last one as it pertains to pharmacy informatics. So it looks like this one has a name too. So let me just remove the name. Okay, I think this is good. All right, posting this one. This next question, which I think I meant to talk about earlier, looks like it's about tech. So they say, "Hi, Brian. I read your post regarding your career switch from pharmacy into tech. I started my career change earlier this year, and it's been so difficult and overwhelming trying to navigate and find the right path to take without any guidance. I'd appreciate if you could kindly make time to have a conversation, maybe give some tips on how to go about this change." Okay, so I'll say a couple of things. The first is going to be a selfish plug. Let's see. Here it is. The first thing I'm going to say is that my journey most recently was, obviously pivoting from pharmacy to tech. Technically, I'm not in a pharmacy role anymore, where you don't need a pharmacy license to do what I do. So I've transitioned away, and going back a few months, I started looking for new opportunities back in like November of 2021. And I interviewed with over 100 different companies in different industries that spanned federal government, management consulting, pharma, tech, traditional academia, even public health. And I've learned a lot of what that experience was like. What are the skills they're looking for? What kind of things should I prioritize? What kind of questions are they asking? What's the value proposition that I can offer with my skill sets and things like that? And I put that into that course I just posted, talking about how I prepared, what things I learned, where I failed, things to focus on, and some of the differences and nuances. And I think to extrapolate a couple of things from that is one, the process of or the process of getting into tech is very different than what we've been learning in uh, pharmacy as a whole. So I think your approach, or rather my approach, was had to change quite a bit, and I learned that through like failing different interviews, not getting responses, and things like that. So I think that's the very first tip I would say. Process is different. It's important to learn about what is the differences so you can adjust your approach. You can do that many different ways. You can do that by just asking questions like you did. You can do that by just applying and learning from them. There's actually a lot of great publicly available information that talks about how do you get into different tech companies if you're interested in that. And then another tip I would say here is probably more addressing your first part of your question, which is it's been difficult and overwhelming to navigate and find the right path. Um, I said this in a lecture I did just, I think it was like 2 days ago, where switching to tech from pharmacy, or even if it's from any healthcare field, I don't really think of it as a transition as much as it is a pivot. And the reason why I want to make that distinction is because a transition almost suggests that it's pharmacy is a pathway to tech, which I think is misleading. If you go to tech from pharmacy or any other healthcare uh, field, it's more of a pivot because there are very different skill sets in what they look for. So it, it's important to recognize that there are many skills that you probably do not have to get into tech, which leads to the next point. It's extremely hard to get into tech from just a pure healthcare/pharmacy background, unless they're looking for things like subject matter experts. Um, and so there are a lot of different skills that you probably need to learn and spend time learning to get into tech. Uh, that's one thing to keep in mind. It's hard in that capacity. Uh, uh, Related to that, I would say also that when I was applying, I thought it was going to be very easy. I was like, oh, I have all these years of experience. I have 2 years of residency. I have different like informatics backgrounds. It was very hard. It was very hard because of like some of the points I made earlier. Didn't know what the process was, and I also didn't have the right skill sets to apply. I just wasn't competitive. I didn't have that kind of skill set. I talk a little bit more about those skill sets and what I've learned about them to be simple and short. They're technical skills, um, having knowledge of SQL, having knowledge of programming languages like R and Python, and the other one that I think especially health tech companies are interested in is fire. So having those things and experiencing those things will make you a lot more competitive. So part of my time in interviewing, I began learning on my free time how to do those skills. Um, but yes, the going back to what I was saying, I got a little sidetracked, is that tech companies may have a difficult time seeing the value that you may provide as a pharmacist and what you bring to the table. And I think Dennis says this quite a bit. it's important when you're applying to these different jobs that you are able to articulate the value that you provide, because the common perception that still persists to this day is that pharmacists just sit behind the counter and literally just count pills. Obviously, we all know that's very far from the truth, but that's the perception, because they're not in that industry and they're not familiar with what pharmacists do. So I think your ability to provide and articulate that value when you're applying to a health tech company becomes really important as well. For example, there are situations, or there are many situations where tech companies would benefit from just the pure experience, healthcare experience of what happens in a hospital or community setting. Um, they may not know something as simple as the difference between a brand name drug and a generic name drug, something that pharmacists obviously would know, in the back of the back of their head, that hey, Zestril and lisinopril are the same thing. There's a generic, it's just a generic name for this brand name, but a tech person might not, and they may consider them two different things. So i- being able to bridge that gap and be able to explain to someone something as simple as that, and there's many of those simple examples, shows and demonstrates your value. Another one may be like usage of beta blockers in heart failure, being a little bit more clinical in the context. A tech company may be trying to solve a problem related to heart failure or management of heart failure. And they may see by Googling that you use beta blockers in heart failure, right? So they might pull what kind of beta blockers exist in the world, and that they might find that, hey, propanolol is one of those, right? And so they were going to just simply say, oh, propranolol, that's going to be something that can treat heart failure. Or they might find metoprolol and they pull up metoprolol, but they also include metoprolol eye drops or something like that. Obviously, those are very incorrect answers. But if you're able to articulate this in your interviews, or in your resume to some extent, cover letters, stuff like that, you can demonstrate the value that you bring, which is being able to translate these clinical requirements to technical solutions. So that's probably one of the biggest advices that I can say, is identifying unique examples in ways you can articulate your value. Because just saying you're a pharmacist going to health tech, my experience is that no one knows what value that is, especially tech companies. You're going to have to be able to prove that in some way or articulate that value. A lot of the health tech companies that I saw were looking for physicians or nurses. Rarely ever saw pharmacists, very rare. So again, articulate that value. All right. I think I was going to talk more about my experience pivoting into tech, but I think I am not, because I've actually been streaming for quite a bit. I'll take maybe one or two more questions here, and then we can just kind of end the live stream. So this last question is one that I always get, related to Epic. So the question here is, thank you for the videos and information. Have you gotten an Epic Willow certification? Can we get it on our own or must be through an employer? So to be very direct to the question, do I have a Epic Willow certification? Yes. I got mine during my PGY2 residency training. I got proficiency in that. And then I officially got the Epic Willow certification again when I was at my job at Mayo Clinic. Can we get it on our own? The answer to that is also yes, but it must be done through a certain path. So you kind of highlighted in your question, yes, it must be done through your employer. Your employer must also have Epic. So if it's like some hospital you're trying to work for, that hospital must have Epic to be able to do it on your own. And part of why that is because Epic has a user web where you can log in and access the training materials, but you can't access it if your organization isn't part of Epic because it requires a login and sign up using your organization's email address. It's the only way you can do it. And once you do that, you have access to the training materials. But to get like certified, you have to take exams usually as part of a certification. And usually the way you take those exams is dependent on your employer. So your employer has different processes in how you may take those exams. And that's something that you will have to check with your employer. So one, you have to know if your employer has Epic. If they do, cool. You can get a user web account. Two, you need to figure out what the process is like to take the exam at your organization. So you have to reach out to your contacts who work on Epic at your organization and say, hey, I'm interested in getting Epic certified. What is the process to take these exams? And they'll tell you more about that. So that's one path. The other way is obviously just working for Epic directly. So Epic, the EHR company hires a lot of people. You can actually go apply and work for them, and you can get training and certification through them. The last one, which is not talked about very often, is if you go into consulting. There are some consulting organizations, even smaller ones, or actually many of the smaller ones, that will allow you to take Epic certifications if you work through them. And part of the reason why is because if you want to consult, you have to have an Epic certification. So that's another opportunity. But those are the only routes to get Epic certified, is what I'll say. Okay, I think that is the main thing. Maybe the last kind of a few minutes, I'll just kind of talk very high level about my experience overall. It's 5 months now since I've transitioned from pharmacy to tech, and I'll share a couple of comments there, and we can end the live stream. But before I do, say one more time, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in these live streams. My hope with these live streams is to engage with people in real time, but also to answer questions more often in a timely manner. So, all right, I'm just going to wrap this one up with just a couple of high-level thoughts about my transition to tech. The first thing I'll say is that it's been very exciting. It's very exciting because it's something new. I've always been someone who enjoys learning new things, and there's a lot of new things to learn in tech. And my role, which is a data architect, requires much more knowledge of technical things, SQL, R, Python, amongst many other technical tools, which I can't really name. But there are even like basic things like GitHub, which is a source control for code. It's you almost think of it like versioning in a Microsoft Word document. But just learning a lot of how tech works and functions has been a really big part of it. And so, but it's been very exciting because it's like learning something new. Obviously, with learning anything new, it can be also very stressful and it could be frustrating because you might not understand it. And I think that's been maybe a second part of it is been some of the things that I've been learning have been frustrating because I'm like, what I could do in my former role very fast, I struggle a little bit more in my current role because I just have no idea how to do it. So it's humbling in many ways because I have to ask for help quite a bit, or I'm spending a lot of time just Googling different things to learn more about a certain workflow or how to do certain things within a programming language. Lots of that. So exciting is one, frustrating is the other one, and probably a little bit stressful. I probably work a little bit more than others right now because I'm just spending a lot of time learning. The next thing is that it is how best to describe it. I want to be very high level with it. Um, there's ambiguity, I think, in working in startups, and I think that's like a double-edged sword in some ways, and some people are not a fan of that. So, talking more in general terms, when you work at a startup, you're trying to solve some problem. You don't know how you're going to solve it, or maybe you do, but that solution may not work all the time. So you're just constantly pivoting from solution to solution. But also, it's just a ton of unknowns versus if you work for a company that's established, you know you need to do these reports, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and that gets the job done. In startups, that is not typically the case. Um, and so there's a lot of ambiguity, is what I'm trying to say. And some people thrive on that, and some people stress over it because you're not really told what you need to do, and you're not really sure what you may need to do. And if you're one of those individuals, you're probably going to struggle. Um, Conversely, if you like the unknown, if you like trying to new solutions to problems that may have not never been solved, then startups is a great place to be. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy most is because I'm not sure how I will solve certain problems in my day to day, but it's very exciting because every day is very different. Trying out different ideas, working collaboratively with people to solve them is extremely rewarding. So I think that's the other thing that's been very exciting is just new things, difficult problems, amazing colleagues that are extremely talented. I learn something new all the time. Probably asking a lot of dumb questions because these are things that most tech people should know. But it's those are some of my more general high level thoughts. I'll probably share more in a video that goes much more succinct and to the point of my experience overall. But very exciting. The last thing I'll probably say with tech is that it's a little scary right now with the whole economy. I think tech being more in the growth sector is uh, risky if anyone wanted to pivot into tech because you know valuations are high and investor money is lower, and so if you're in a startup situation, um, most startups fail, so it's a very risky move for those who may be thinking about pivoting into tech. All right, I'll kind of end the live stream there. Thanks for everyone that has tuned in. I'm going to be trying to do these once a month. And if you have any questions, definitely send them my way. And in any social media platform, I'll just kind of like collate them into a document and just read them on these kind of live streams. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I will see you all next month. And until